Okay, hey everybody. Wanted to thank you all for joining us today. My name is Jenna Nilo. I am the Director of Marketing and Outreach with Illinois Digital Educators Alliance. Today I want to welcome our webinar host, Renee Hobbs with Media Education Lab. She is going to go over digital citizenship and digital literacy. What's the connection for us today? But before I turn the reins over to Renee, I just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items for everybody, and then we'll get things going. So, to that effect, please make sure that you are muted. Everybody should have come in muted, but just please make sure that you're muted so that we don't interrupt Renee. If you do have any questions throughout the webinar, go ahead and put them into the chat, when Renee takes a breath and I can interrupt her, I will go ahead and monitor that chat room and get those questions out to her. I do believe Renee is also going to try and get some opportunities for you guys to speak as well. So we'll see how that works out and if that's going to go for us. At the end of the webinar, I will be posting in the chat window a link for your PDH hours. So if you are looking to earn the one PDH credit through for Illinois educators today, please keep an eye out for that link at the end. Make sure you stay to the end for that link, and I will post that in the chat window. The link will be available till midnight tonight. And after that, we do close it down so that we can give those of you who are here today credit. Tomorrow, I will be emailing out the recording of the webinar to everybody who registered for the webinar today. And so I want to make sure that you guys do get your credit for being here before we shut that down at midnight. And like I said, you will be getting a recording of the webinar. And Renee, will you be sharing the slide deck so I can send that out to everybody as well? Fabulous. So we'll also send that slide deck out, a link to the slide deck out to you as well. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and turn things over to Renee. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself. And like I said, when questions come in and I can go interrupt Renee, I will do so. Otherwise, everybody enjoy. Thanks, Renee. Renee, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. You're good.
Oh, good show.
Thank you. So start over.
No problem. My name is Renee Hobbs. I'm a professor of communication with a joint appointment in the College of Education at the University of Rhode Island. With my colleague, Julie Quiro, I'm the co-director of the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy. And so for the last 30 years, I've been sort of deeply invested in teacher education around the topic of media literacy education. And so among my 10 books and 150 scholarly and professional articles and videos and multimedia, my lab's mission, the Media Education Lab's mission, is to advance the quality of digital and media literacy education through scholarship and community service. I've been really fortunate enough to offer professional development on 4 continents. And so I have actually watched the terms digital citizenship, media literacy, digital literacy, information literacy, visual literacy, news literacy. I've watched those develop over 30 years of practice. So today I'm hoping to explore this interesting question: what's the connection between digital literacy and media literacy? So let's get started. So if you want to learn more about my work, you can go to the Media Education Lab website. There we are promoting the new book called The Library Screen Scene, Film and Media Literacy in Schools, Colleges, and Communities. That's a study of more than 178 libraries. About 20 of them are from Illinois. Who knew? But we were looking at best practices of film and media literacy all over the country, and that's our new book. We're really proud of it. Published by Oxford University Press. And of course, we're super thrilled to be bringing the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy next year to Chicago. July 19th through 24th. We've been running the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy in Providence, Rhode Island for the last 7 years. This coming up year in 2020, we're partnering with National Louis University, and we'll be hosting an intense 42-hour hands-on, minds-on professional development program right downtown Chicago. And so we're really looking forward to making new friends during our time there next year. So one of the reasons why the link between digital literacy and digital citizenship is so interesting is because both terms are trying to respond to this kind of question that keeps changing and changing on us. What essential competencies are needed to be citizens in a digital age? And how do we support students in developing these competencies? And you yourself know this from personal experience because, you know, we haven't been swiping on our cell phones forever, right? It's a relatively new phenomenon, and students haven't been using TikTok forever. It's a relatively recent phenomenon. And a lot of the practices that we now do routinely in schools where we have one-to-one laptops are relatively new practices that we are really trying to figure out as we go along what essential competencies are needed. So the changing nature of the definitions of these terms is because of the changing nature of these technologies. And one thing we're all wrestling with right now is the issue of algorithmic personalization. Take a look at this cartoon, right? So algorithmic personalization now means that when students go search, we know that when students search on Google, their results are going to differ than what happens when their teachers search on Google. When our students search on Netflix, they're going to find different videos and films than when you search on Netflix. And when students go to look for books on Amazon, they're going to find different books than you're going to find on Amazon, So algorithmic personalization means that our entertainment, our information, and our persuasion are all increasingly personalized. And what kind of competencies are needed to manage, to thrive in a world where personalized entertainment, information, and persuasion are a routine part of life? That's a question that both literacy is trying to address. So this question of the unknowable future means that this is an impossible talk. I'm really going to apologize in advance, right? I don't know the answer to how digital citizenship and digital literacy are going to prepare people for an unknowable future. I don't have a crystal ball, but I think what I want to emphasize is that the terms digital citizenship and digital literacy have attracted a community of learners in the worlds of professional development, and not just in education, but in humanities and sciences and leadership studies and engineering and computer science and many fields. So we are going to need an interdisciplinary community to figure out the answer to this big question. Now, one of the reasons why I am particularly interested in digital citizenship and digital literacy is because of something that's always been true, that language, media, and technology can create unreal realities. And that goes for everything from once upon a time, right? The world of fiction, to special effects and Photoshop and fake news and deep fakes and all of the rest. So the power of digital media and technology to represent imagination and truth and everything in between really highlights the reason why we can't just treat digital media as kind of a neutral conveyor of content, because it's not, and it never has been, right? It always has a point of view, a purpose, and a goal. So to understand digital citizenship and digital literacy, it's worth recognizing how educators and everyone else in the society is wrestling with a complex love-hate relationship with print media, visual media, sound media, and digital media. And educators' own love-hate relationship affects the choices they make in the classroom. So some teachers are completely in love with the power of connected learning and the opportunity to Skype with authors and bring classrooms together across time and space. And they're going to use technology in a different way than a teacher who's kind of a little bit fearful about the fact that all her 10-year-old boys are encountering pornography in one way or the other, right? That kind of teacher is going to approach the topic of digital citizenship and digital literacy differently than the teacher who's keen on kids making media as a way to represent their learning, because they see the power of bringing language and image together to create multimedia. So there's a lot of different stances on the topic of digital citizenship and digital literacy that are rooted in this love-hate relationship. Okay, so, and convergence is meaning that everything is becoming digital, right? So print books are becoming digital, right? And images are digital, and sound is digital, and everything is digital. So it's absolutely inescapable, the need for these competencies. In the academic world, in higher education, we often use the phrase empowerment and protection to reflect this dialectic about that educators and parents recognize they want to empower kids to use these tools wisely, and they want to protect kids from the worst dangers, risks, and harms. Now, sometimes people think that's like an either-or thing, right? Either you are all about empowerment or you're all about protection. And sometimes you'll hear people criticize each other. Oh, that's a fear-based approach, or that's just a gee whiz, rah-rah technology, ed tech approach. But actually both our love and our hate are kind of tied together and need to be considered in relation to each other. So either or thinking in reflecting on our relationship with media and technology for learning is really important. And of course, you have experienced this yourself when it comes to the technologies we use in schools, and the smart boards and platforms and multimedia and creative tools. We all have a love-hate relationship with each and every one of these tools used in the context of K-12 education. So that informs how we think about digital citizenship and digital literacy as well. Okay, so I'm about to tell you the story of how these two terms developed. But to do that, I have to remind you that for the last 20 years, filtering and blocking online has been a part of what made it possible for the internet to come into schools, because in the year 2000, the federal government said, if you're going to bring the internet into school and you want the special E-rate funding to bring the internet into school, you're going to have to use some filtering or blocking. And you can choose, school districts can choose any way you want to filter or block, but there has to be some mechanism for that. Now, besides filtering and blocking, there have been other issues about the internet in schools that has affected how we think about digital citizenship and digital literacy. Concerns about FERPA and COPPA, regulations that protect privacy, have affected how we think about digital citizenship and digital literacy. Concerns about bandwidth limitations in schools have affected how we think about digital citizenship and digital literacy. And administrative control over online content and activities, the differing levels of trust that exist between school administrators and teachers, and between teachers and students. Those levels of trust or control affect how we think about digital citizenship and digital literacy. Then, of course, the concerns about liability and minimizing risk, and the more generalized concerns we have about the potential risks of moving to a highly mediated educational system, right? That might lead us away from the sort of deeply relational, nurturing, socio-emotionally deep way of thinking about children and schools generalized fears about the way in which machines distance us from interpersonal face-to-face relationships are also part of that equation. Okay, so keep all of those ideas in mind as I share with you a little bit about, well, activists like Wes Fryer, who says schools blocking all access to YouTube is un-American, that it interferes with the ability to develop digital citizenship competencies and digital literacy competencies. It's a bold claim indeed. That we can't really prepare students for living in a world full of choices for media and technology and information and entertainment and persuasion if schools never give kids the opportunity to practice developing those skills. Wow, intriguing idea. So in a nutshell, in a way, there's a lot of different stances. Actually, digital literacy and digital citizenship are just two of many different stances. And I'll bet some of these terms are familiar to you as well. Skills like online reading, media production, youth media, coding and programming, technology integration, Google Apps for Education, online learning, information literacy. So digital literacy and digital citizenship aren't the only games in town. There's a lot of other paradigms as well. And that's in part because so many stakeholders are starting to understand the value of helping people of all ages develop these essential competencies, right? So the media and technology is interested for future workers and maybe for future customers. The government is interested, economic competitiveness, education is focused on it. Activists care about it. Librarians care about it. Creative people care about it. So as the stakeholders for thinking in new ways about the competencies required for life in a mediated digital society is growing, the interest in digital citizenship and digital literacy is growing as well. All right, little history lesson. Digital citizenship really came onto the scene in 2000 with the SIPA internet safety term. And the phrase internet safety is what we generally, how we generally talked about helping kids be able to use the web in a way that was responsible and safe. Very early on during that period, that's really pre-Web 2.0, right? This is when the web was on, a group of folks began to use the term digital citizenship to refer to kids as activists using the power of the web to express and share their developing understanding of their citizenship skills around activism on issues of concern to youth. So that was kind of intriguing to think about. Very early on, digital citizenship was linked not just to internet safety, but also to this idea of preparing kids to be citizens in a democracy, right? Where self-government needs, you need to be more than just a spectator on the political scene, you need to be a participant. But really the concept of digital citizenship firmed up right around 2007 when a big spate of education reform began happening. Of course, that was right coinciding with the Great Recession, when magazines like Time Magazine and many other places began to say, we've got to get our schools out of the 20th century and into the 21st century, right? And this big argument was made that, you know, schools are failing our students because children are still sitting in rows, they're still reading from print textbooks, they're still filling out worksheets, and they're still doing the stuff they did 100 years ago. So that impetus helped fuel the one-to-one laptop movement, and it also helped position digital citizenship as a sort of set of life skills where you could think about things like media balance and well-being, privacy and security, digital footprint and identity, relationships and communication, cyberbullying, digital drama and hate speech, and news and media literacy. And those 6 categories represent the digital citizenship curriculum developed by Common Sense Media. Clearly the largest organization providing digital citizenship curriculum to American public schools. Digital literacy had a different historical trajectory. That term began to be used as early as 1997 with Paul Glister's book called Digital Literacy. And there he was really thinking about extending the terms information literacy and media literacy to the digital realm, to the world of, at that time, web pages, right? And in 2005, as Web 2.0 came into being and as we started using social media, the term digital literacy got linked to the practices of participating in social media, not just as a consumer, but also as a creator. And by 2012, the American Library Association had gathered groups of librarians and experts together to define digital literacy as the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, understand, evaluate, create, and communicate digital information. They recognized that embedded in those digital literacy skills were basic reading and writing skills, right? So in that sense, they saw digital literacy as an expansion of traditional print literacies. And notice that they said that true digital literacy requires both cognitive and technical skills. So they didn't want people to think that digital literacy was simply like knowing how to keyboard or knowing how to manage your files or save your files or know the difference between hardware and software, that it was not just knowledge about computers, that it also involved sort of cognitive critical thinking skills. Okay, now, weirdly, the term began to be embraced differently by technology directors and teachers. And of course, teachers use the term digital citizenship and technology directors use the term digital literacy. But if you look at the different historical trajectories of those two terms, it makes perfect sense that technology directors would definitely see digital citizenship as in their ambit. After all, because of the SIPA laws, they are mandated to provide some internet safety and digital citizenship pedagogy. And teachers began to start thinking about reading and writing in new ways, thus embracing the term digital literacy. But now, check this out. You know how fun it is to use Google Trends, right? Yeah, I hope you do. Give me a thumbs up if you know how fun it is. So I just threw the two terms into Google Trends, and what did I notice? Is that, you know, they follow a similar pattern of use, except that digital literacy has these weird, do you see them over here? These weird spikes where at some point something happens, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, something happens once a year to really bring digital citizenship up in Google Trends. I'd like you to think a little bit about why that might be. Here's another way to look at the chart. Google Trends also shows me that the term digital citizenship is used more in Michigan and Illinois and Nevada and Alaska and Vermont. And the term digital literacy is used more in West Virginia, New York State, Massachusetts, where I live, Rhode Island. Looks like, is that North Carolina? So this is my question to you. What might, sorry. What might explain these big spikes in why digital citizenship gets talked about once a year, and what might explain the differences that exist from one state to another? Let's talk it over. What do you think? "19 of you, 19 cool participants. What do you think might explain the differences between the terms digital citizenship and digital literacy as they vary from state to state and as they spike at different points in the year?" Political election time, says Lisa K. Point. M. Toom says it might have to do with political climates of different locations. Ah, what a good observation. It might be that if a certain fearful, terrible thing happens, right, where a teacher does something awful and there's a big media blah, blah, blah about it, that could increase conversation dialogue. E. Lopez, what a great point. Maybe at different points in time, new initiatives, new funding opportunities, new partnerships with different digital platforms. And Jim, really great point. What time exactly? Is it happening every September, or is it happening at Christmas time, or in the end of the year in May when certain things happen? So that would be a good thing to do some research on. And Illinois digital, this must be Jenna, maybe it's associated with digital citizenship, right? There's more perhaps during Digital Citizenship Week when it's overtly promoted. Thank you so much for those great insights. I think it's not something I've seen written about. I'm going to be paying a lot of attention. I was just last week, coincidentally, I was doing workshops with teachers up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's where they use the term digital literacy a lot. And down in Fayetteville, Arkansas, where they tend to use the term digital citizenship more. So I asked people there about those terms, why they use them, and most people really didn't know the history of how these terms emerged in their community. And some people I talked to said they think of these terms as kind of mostly the same, and other people think of them as quite a bit different. So we're gonna see if we can tackle that topic next. Oh yeah, so back to sort of what are the motivating factors that are going on right now in this idea of digital citizenship moving target, right? One of the things that the research is helping us understand is that kids are using digital technologies now for new forms of playful learning that many of us teachers are unaware of. So just a little example on that, in case you're not watching TikTok and tuned into all the history videos that are getting produced, take a look at this one. I guess you wonder where I've been. Okay, so this high school student is kind of playfully representing her understanding of the Greek classic, the Odyssey, right? That's quite bizarre, and it's a remix for sure. She's using contemporary music to do it. How about this one? Look at this one. Hey! Oh no! I got a disease walking around through your neighborhood, spreading all my fleas, everybody. Hey! Oh no! I got a disease walking around through your neighborhood, spreading all my fleas, everybody. Wow, so this student is representing her understanding of motion mentions of first contact, right? When the Native Americans encountered the European settlers. And what about this kid? I can prove that I never wrote them all. Do you promise not to tell another soul what you saw? No one else was in the room where it happened. Is that a yes? Yes.
I can prove that I never wrote them all. Do you promise not to tell another soul what you saw? No one else was in the room where it happened. Is that a yes? Yes.
Whoa! So this kid is remixing Hamilton, set it 150 years later in the 1890s to address the issue of Gilded Age politics. So when people think about digital citizenship, they often think about all of the risks and harms and dangers that can happen to kids as they represent their identities and represent their understanding of the world online. And when people use the term digital literacy, they often think about all of the sort of positive ways that kids are using digital media to represent their identities. But if you're a parent or teacher, you know that it's never just all positive and it's never all just negative, because there's plenty of really awful, trashy things on TikTok that I would never show in a professional development program, right? Because they're so awful. But there's also plenty of really great stuff. And in some ways, this is the reason why both terms are kind of like a moving target, right? And every time we try to pin down in a very precise way what the competencies are, the technologies change in ways that force us to take a step back. That being said, digital citizenship has taken off in many, many states because of our fears about living in a cut and paste culture, where instead of reading or writing, kids can just cut and paste their way to complete projects and activities. And of course, at the college level, we know this is a very substantial concern. Recent research from this guy, Newton, did a big meta-analysis and said, it's very hard to measure this because kids don't really want to report this, and it's challenging methodologically to understand how widespread cut and paste culture is in higher education. But at least 15% of college students use term paper mills and pay someone to write their paper for them. And our fears about how digital technology makes everything easy, right? I don't need to know how to add anymore. I just need to punch in my numbers and hit the plus button. The fears that people are losing competencies because of the ease of technologies represents a real concern. And that's why, in my view, digital citizenship and digital literacy are both part of like a larger umbrella. I call it media literacy, that includes things like ethical reasoning, emotional response, collaboration, dialogue, creativity and digital skills, and multimodal writing, credibility analysis, search, curation, inquiry, reading, and citizenship and activism. That big kindergartens or fifth grades or seventh grades or in 11th grade or college, I see these competencies being enacted in many creative and different ways by talented teachers. Teachers who are aware that when we use digital technologies to share meaning, the meanings come in many different forms, right? So whenever you see topics of meaning and interpretation, symbols, forms, and formats, you're kind of in the digital literacy side of the house. But you know what I'm really excited about? I'm excited about how the concept of digital citizenship is beginning to embrace some of those concepts traditionally associated with meaning making and digital literacy. Here's a slide that represents the 5 big concepts associated with the Digital Citizen Dig Sit Commit initiative that ISTE rolled out this last year, those of us who were at the ISTE conference, right? These foundational competencies are written with beautiful target language, I can target language, and this is a much deeper and more comprehensive way of thinking about digital citizenship than we have had before. It has 5 elements. The first one is inclusive. The inclusive nature of digital citizenship emphasizes this idea that learners are open to hearing and respectfully recognizing multiple viewpoints and engaging with others online with respect and empathy. So that really connects the socio-emotional competencies with the respect for diverse points of view. Makes perfect sense. Informed, and also about diversity in all its many ways and issues of representation, right? And inclusion in that sense as well. Informed, I evaluate the accuracy, perspective, and validity of digital media and social posts. Well, librarians absolutely love this. This is a core feature of information literacy. And of course, with news, we've been thinking more and more about how do we make these decisions about what we can trust and believe. Engaged, the concept is using technology and digital channels for civic engagement to solve problems and be a force for good in both physical and virtual communities. That's the concept of citizenship and activism that people were thinking about in 2004 with this idea that youth should learn to be not just spectators in democracy, but participants in it, because self-governance is our system, right? And being engaged to make a difference in your community means knowing how to use a hashtag and participate in a social movement, knowing how to fill out a form to contact your senator, right? Being able to use social media to be able to organize a group or a demonstration or a protest or mobilization, to be able to evaluate decisions that are made about school funding, about teachers' unions, and everything else. Balanced. The Digital Citizenship Initiative that ISTE launched called DigCit Commit, it really does something it's never done before, inviting us to think about how to prioritize our time online and off. You know, this issue of balance is something really, really important as we think about how much is too much. What does it mean to be dependent on our devices? What does it mean to unplug? And we in the media literacy community, we love that because we're always trying to help people become more aware of our own media use activities and be more intentional and strategic in thinking about why, where, when, and how we use media for different reasons. And then finally, alert, the classic formulation on internet safety. I am aware of my online actions and I know how to be safe and create safe spaces for others online. Okay. So like reframing of digital citizenship, and I'm pretty excited about it. Okay, I'm done. Now we can that answer my question, what's the connection between digital literacy and digital citizenship? Number one, both concepts expand the concept of literacy through this lens of thinking about empowerment and protecting learners, empowering them to use the full force of these tools for learning and for identity development and for socializing and for gaining information and for entertainment and protecting us from the risks, harms, and dangers that are associated with using these tools for those purposes. The second big idea, digital literacy competencies tend to think about digital texts, tools, and technologies in relation to literacy practices like accessing information, interpreting it, analyzing it, creating it, and sharing it. So the term digital literacy gets used if you're thinking about that cycle activities, that cycle that Paulo Freire understood as literacy, right? Gaining awareness of information, interpreting it and analyzing it, creating your own understanding of it, and then sharing that with others to create that beautiful spiral of literacy that helps change the world. And third, digital citizenship has its focus on priorities, emphasizing the social responsibilities needed for effective participation in culture and society. But you see how if you're literate in the 21st century, using digital tools and technologies, you've got to become socially responsible and think about the impact and consequences of the choices you make about how to communicate. I think part of the thing I notice happening in the culture right now, everybody has the power of using these tools, but they don't have the strong sense of social responsibility about using those tools wisely. And I think in a way, one thing I hope happens in K-12 and higher education in the next 5 years is that those terms, digital literacy and citizenship, come closer together, recognize the incredible dialectic that exists between sharing and being socially responsible about what you create and consume. Cool. All right. So let's see if you have any questions or comments. I'm coming to Chicago with my team from the Media Education Lab. Oh, and let me just do one other thing while I've got you trapped here. When teachers ask me, how do you do digital citizenship, I usually do a walk the line activity. You probably have done a walk the line activity where you stand and you move forward or backwards. I want to make sure teachers have a chance to reflect on their own relationship with digital media. So I ask them to agree or disagree with statements like this: I cannot live without digital devices and screen media. I have used or shared digital content that I would not want my colleagues to know about. Agree or disagree. I can be snarky or mean when interacting with people online. Agree or disagree. I see or read online content that I know is inaccurate. Agree or disagree. Each of these, I have experienced online harassment. Agree or disagree. Each of these statements generates really rich conversation among educators, and that is the place to start. It's a community conversation, digital literacy, right? Not just for kids and not just us standing on soapboxes telling kids what to do. It's a conversation that we all need to have as we move forward in thinking about digital literacy in the 21st century. So what questions or comments do you have? I'll stop my sharing now and see what questions do you have. John Langley says, I really like the way you describe digital literacy as a necessary skill to be a good digital citizen. Yeah, thanks very much. I think so too. The connection between the two is really important because if we are thinking about social responsibility, but we don't include any literacy practices, then kind of all we're doing is wagging our fingers at kids and saying, you know, don't, right? But if we link digital citizenship to literacy practices, then we really are acknowledging that kids can be responsible and powerful agents using digital text tools and technologies, right, in a responsible way, and a responsible use of entertainment, a responsible use of information, and a responsible use of persuasion. So is really a great thing, and I feel like pedagogically it also links the classroom and the culture a little bit better too, you know. So it isn't just about like we do this in school, right? In school we do this. It's like, no, in life you're socially responsible, not just in school. Cool. Oh, so Soretta, thank you so much. I don't know if the line it was under 7th graders, but it's an absolutely amazing thing to see how thoughtful kids are when they're given the opportunity to reflect on their own practices. And in a way, some of the paradoxes that we don't get enough time to think about our own decision to be socially responsible, right? And there are a lot of reasons for that. Anonymity, privacy, the online disinhibition that we feel sometimes when using these devices, like nobody's noticing or we're kind of doing it privately. there are many factors that may lead us to be irresponsible, right? When it comes to these tools, through shared conversation, we get to understand kind of we're all in the same boat. So what other comments or questions do you have about the relationship between digital literacy and digital citizenship? Serene says, going back to the idea of literacy as critical thinking and digital citizenship, ... How do you talk to students in that framework? Yeah. So in general, the pedagogies of digital citizenship are dialogic. We're having discussions about how are we responsible? What leads kids to engage in cyberbullying, right? What does it mean to protect your safety? What does it mean to balance your online use and your offline use of media? Those are dialogues. So the best pedagogies for digital citizenship are dialogic. They're rooted in opportunities to share and listen and to offer feedback and to respect diverse points of view and to reflect on your own behavior, for sure. And sure, you can use games, right? And you can use other tools, vocabulary, sure. You give kids a better vocabulary so they can engage in better dialogue. Give kids some background knowledge so they can evaluate this important. High school students are talking about right now about should we regulate Facebook in order to have a more robust democracy, right? Or should Facebook be unregulated? These are the conversations that are happening in Congress right now. So dialogue is the best for digital citizenship. For digital literacy, I mean, it's elements of reading, right? It's that, you know, if we keep handing kids stuff found for them, they never learn to find stuff on their own. That's a problem. We got to fix that. And digital literacy wants kids to learn how to be good at finding stuff, asking good questions, selecting good keywords, and sorting through hit lists. That's a digital literacy competency. Finding information, comprehending it, reading it, and understanding it with meaning, not just print words, but also images and charts and tables and infographics and podcasts and memes. And then creating media to represent your knowledge, right? Whether that's making a music video about meiosis and mitosis in chemistry, or doing a weather report with your iPad and your tablet when you're in kindergarten, creating media and understanding that all media message purposes, right? And points of view. So that's a really great way to think about digital citizenship is dialogic. Digital literacy is rooted in the practices of finding, reading, writing, and I would say reflecting. Yeah. Oh gosh, Soretta, so good to hear. It's really true. Learning how to ask the right question and to pick the right question and understanding that that's a process, right? That's a process of trial and error. You refine it, it's iterative. It's such a beautiful and important, that's a literacy practice that you're developing, Soretta. Okay, that's digital literacy right there. And evaluating sources is also a digital literacy practice, right? And since I'm interested in making connections between the classroom and the culture, then I also want students to realize that they can be doing that at home when they're watching Netflix, when they're watching YouTube, when they're looking at YouTube influencers, right? And I don't want those skills to be just school-related skills. Digital literacy connects the home and school. And so we have to help students make that, you know, when I was at Harvard Ed School millions of years ago, my professor always said, if you want skills to transfer from the classroom to the living room, you have to teach for transfer, right? So we have to help kids analyze ads. We have to help kids analyze popular films. We have to help them understand newspapers and social media posts that they experience in the world outside the classroom. And that's one way we're preparing them for life too, right? Not just preparing them to take tests, but preparing them for the world they're going to inhabit. Cool. I really enjoyed this conversation. Illinois teachers, you totally rock. I am just so thrilled to be coming to Chicago. I'll just give you a little bit of backstory on why it is we're coming. For the last 7 years, we've taught over 800 teachers in this incredible professional development program that we have. And teachers really are amazed at the program, and we are amazed at the people who come. Now we're partnering with National Louis University. For the next 5 years, we're going to be offering the Summer Institute in Digital Literacy a 1-week program in July, and it's part of the Graduate Certificate in Digital Literacy. So you can learn more about that at the Media Education Lab. That's mediaeducationlab.com. And I think it's time for me to turn it over to you, Jenna, about what's coming up next, right?
Thank you so much, Renee. That was awesome. I'm sure everybody appreciated it. There were some really good conversations going on the side too. So thank you very much, and thank you to everybody for participating today. Let's see here. So next week, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are interested, we would love to have you back for next week's Wednesday webinar. And that is Beyond the Algorithm, How Your School's Social Media Tells a Story. That's going to be with our partner class Intercom. That is next Wednesday, November 6th from 4 to 5 p.m. You can register using that bit.ly or just go on our website, ideaillinois.org, go to upcoming events, and you'll find it there. And then the following week, we have another webinar. And that one is going to be another digital literacy. This one is News Literacy Project. One of our professional learning partners is going to be doing a webinar on teaching digital verification to spark news literacy learning. So again, that one is November 13th, Wednesday from 4 to 5 p.m. So if you're interested in those two upcoming webinars, please go ahead and register for those. We would love to have you. And then if there's any last minute questions, otherwise I am going to throw the link for the PDH in our chat today. So that just came through. It's bit.ly/digsit1030. So click that link, go ahead, fill that form out, and we'll do the back and forth with the getting you registered for the PDH. Again, that link will be available until midnight tonight. And then tomorrow morning, sometime around noon probably, I will have this video edited, cut out all the beginning of everybody joining, and I will send out an email with the presentation, the video, and then Renee has offered graciously to share her presentation. So I will send out a link in that same email to that as well. So keep an eye out for that email. That will be going to everybody who registered today. So
yep, I'll put my slides immediately on the Twitter with the, if you look for me at Renee Hobbs, and then Jenna, I'll also send you the link so that you can share it with the members that way. So either way,
perfect. Thank you.
Twitter and Jenna.
Awesome. Thank you. So once again, thank you so much, Renee. We truly appreciated this. Some really good stuff. Thank you to everybody who gave up their dinner hour. Appreciate that as well. And we'll hang out for another minute or two. If you have any other questions, go ahead, throw them in the chat. Otherwise, we'll sign off shortly. So thanks so much, everybody.
Bye now.